A pleasure to have every one of us here. So I'd like someone to. Last week we started our introduction to SQL, and the RDBMS tool we're using is SQL Server. And so far last week we started with an introduction. We're about to start with formulas and functions last week. So I don't know if anybody would like to volunteer to give us a recap of what we learned last week. Would you like to volunteer to give us a recap of what we learned last week? Okay. I'm very sorry. At this point I might have to call somebody. So it's okay. Are you there? If you are there, please go ahead.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah, sorry. Last week class, I was very, very distracted. Even now, I'm not even settled. I'm kind of working, driving, and
Okay.
still in this class. So I've not really had time to go through last week class. Please pardon me.
Oh, okay. No problem. So let
Thank you.
me call New World. Okay. Are you there? I think New World was in last week's class as well.
Yeah, I'm here. I think from last week class we did how to do count. So we did some functions on how to extract some data from our table. How to extract data from the table, how to extract names. I think names where they are from, the country. Yeah, that's what I can remember. Basically extracting.
Oh, okay. I'm with you. Okay. Thank you very much, New World. I see some of the faces here are also the faces from last week. So basically, last week we began an introduction to SQL, and that's actually what we started with. The tool we're using is SQL Server. And last week we decided to take time to understand what a database is, tables in databases, how to create databases, and how to also populate the database with tables. And last week we were able to create a database containing 4 tables. We call the database the Movies DB. That's the Movies database. And we were able to populate the database with 4 tables that we have been querying since last week. We have the actors table, the directors table, the movie revenue table, and the movies table. Now, I just want to give a reminder before we get into the class properly that if you have not been doing your project, the criteria for getting a certificate at the end of this is number 1, that you are punctual in the classroom, attending classes. Secondly, your projects must be complete. Your projects, you must have done all the projects, Excel, Power BI, and eventually SQL, because at the end of the day, you're also going to be needing it for the portfolio building session that's going to be coming up in the next weeks. So moving on to today's work, because we have to move quickly today, and we have here functions in SQL. I explained to us during the last class that we are going to be looking at 4 functions, 4 function types: the aggregate functions, the text and string functions, the date functions, and the case functions that we can also call logical functions. So last week I was about to start with the aggregate functions, where I said we're going to be looking at count, sum, average, minimum, and maximum. Now, as we go on, we are also maybe going to be exploring a few more, but for the sake of today's class, we're going to be starting with aggregate functions. Now, last week, before the class started, I asked what are some of the aggregate functions that we've learned from the course of our Excel classes, and someone responded that with some of the functions that has been learned in the past, and I was quite excited to hear those functions. Now, here in SQL, aggregate functions are functions that perform operations on set of values, and they return a single value as a result. And another thing about aggregate functions is that they work hand in hand with the select command. So we're going to be starting with the count function. Basically, we already know what the count function does from our knowledge in Excel. We already know what the count function does from our knowledge in Excel. If we want to use the count function to count, say, a certain category of movies, take for example, from the movies table, let's say we want to count all English movies. We want to count all English movies. First things first, let's go to the movies table and select all from there. All right, so we're going to be calling out the movie name, and we're going to say select. Then the aggregation can come after select. Say count. Now we want to count all, and we are going to give an alias. When you perform an aggregation, let me show you what I mean by an alias. I will say from the movies table, where the movie language equals English. So basically, for this, if you run this like this is going to give us a count of English movies. However, if you look at the result, you will see that the result is showing no column name right above the header for the result. So that means here, we have to select the count of all and then give it an alias. Now, what's an alias? And meaning, and also known as, you can name a column after performing an aggregation on it. So I'm going to say as, we use the as clause for that, and say as English. You cannot use space when you're aliasing, just the same way you cannot use space when you are naming a table in SQL. So I'll say as English, count of English movies. So if I execute this, can you see that the English movies is now showing above the count? So I hope we're still together. I hope I'm still audible.
Yes.
All right. Please, any questions so far? Okay. In the absence of questions, now, we all know what the count function does. You can use the count function to return the count of a particular column or a particular set of values. Now, I'll just try to use the count function in another instance. From that same movie table, we're going to be counting. We're going to be doing the count. Okay, good. So let's do a count of movies longer than 2 hours. A count of movies longer than 2 hours. So we say select count of all, and we say as, then we give it an alias, say movies longer than 2 hours. Then we go from the movies table. And then we can do where the movie length is greater than 120. If we run this will give us a count of those movies. This will give us a count of these movies. Now, moving on from the count function, I'm going to be reviewing the sum function. What the sum function does is that it calculates the sum of numeric values in a column. So basically, for us to be able to use the sum function, whatever column we are referencing within a database must contain numeric values. Now, to use the sum function, it also works side by side with the select function. So if I say, firstly, let's view a table that we can use for the select function. So if I say select all from movie revenue, you see that from here we have the domestic takings and the international takings containing numbers, also the movie ID and revenue ID. Now, if we want to do a sum of the domestic takings, for example, we'll say total domestic takings. And then from here, we'll go select, and then sum comes immediately after. Sum, we'll open a bracket, and then insert the column that contains our values. So we go domestic takings. Now, for this, we are also going to have to alias and go as. That is to be able to name whatever result we get. So we say as total domestic takings, and then this will be from the movie revenue table. Now, if you run this, you will see that the sum function has calculated a total of the domestic takings column. The same way, if what we decide to do is the total of the international takings, we can basically use the sum function for that as well. Now, not to dwell too much on the sum function, we can use the sum function in cases where we also have some filters that we are calculating by. Take, for example, if we want to sum the movie length of Chinese movies, if we want to sum the movie length of Chinese movies, from the movies table, we can still use the where clause with it and say where the movie language equals Chinese. So last week I explained to us how the DRL and DQL filters that work with where work. So we already know how to use relational operators when we are querying, and also other clauses that we can use for querying our results. So when we sum this up, this will give us the total length based on our clause. Now, moving on from the sum function, in our Excel, we must have also learned the mean and the max function. The mean and the max function. Before I proceed, just so we are still together, I hope there's no question from the house. I hope there's no question from the house. If there's a question, please unmute. You can unmute yourself and just speak. If you have a question so far based on what has been done. Okay. There's no questions from the house. So we're saying I'm good to go. I should move on. New world. Are we good?
Yes, well, good.
Oh, okay. Okay. How about Eric? Eric, are we good?
Yes, we are good. Yes, we are good.
All right. All right. Thank you. So moving on from where we are at currently
Sorry?
to, I said thank you. That's good to know. I'll be moving on now. So for min and max, we already know what they do. Min finds the minimum value in a column, while max finds the maximum value in a column. Now, for the min and the max functions, just like all the other functions, they also work with select. Just like the other aggregate functions, they also work with select. Let's say, for example, we want to find the movie with the shortest length and the movie with the longest length. In this case, we can use min for the shortest. So the formula is going to go this way: select from movies. So we'll go select minimum movie length. I don't know, but if you've noticed anything about the aggregate functions, you see that they've been colored in purple. Now, you can see the color here. Minimum movie length as shortest movie. If we run this, you will see that we have the movie with the shortest length. Now, this is where it then gets interesting. If you want to then see the movie, that is the movie name, we're going to have to add the movie name and say, okay, select the movie name, select the movie name now, and then before performing the aggregation. If we run this like this is not going to work. This is where the group by clause comes in. Last week, when I was explaining data retrieval to us, I introduced us to the order by. That the order by is used for ordering of results. Now, we can see group by as the brother of order of order by, but both of them perform very different functions. While order by orders or sorts the results, group by is needed when we are selecting other columns with aggregated columns, because group by is what will call out the other columns that are selected alongside your aggregated columns. So if we want to see this group by, that is, if we want to see the movie name, we have to use group by. You say group by the movie name. Now, anytime you select other columns with aggregated columns, you must use group by. It's a non-negotiable. Anytime you select other columns with group by, you must use a group by to call it out. So if you've selected any column with your aggregated column, you must use group by to call out the other column. So if we had another column here, it would also be included with the group by. So if you run this now that the group by has been included, can you see that now this is still showing the select, the movie name, the minimum movie length as shortest movie. Now, for this case, if we want to get just the shortest, because we are now grouping by, we have to include order by to order our results and say order by shortest movie in this order. So if you run this now, this will put our shortest movie in the last regard. We still don't have just one movie. Top then has to come in here. Top has to come in, say, okay, give us the top one, because this is what will limit the results to give us the answer that we want in the right order. I don't know if there's any question on that. Please, your question. You can ask your question. If you have a question, please go ahead. I'm with you. Now, if we wanted to find the longest movie using max, we'll just say select. We can perform a max directly and say, okay, help us find the maximum of the movie length as the longest movie from the movies table. If you run this, all we will get will be the longest movie. Now, we have 168. However, if we want to see the movie name, we're going to have to include top, group by, and order by to get the results appropriately. Now, what top will do is that it will limit the results to just one movie name. What group by will do is that it will include the movie name that we want to see, and order by will order the results in ascending order so that we will see the value that we want to see. I hope that is clear.
Sorry, please, can you take that again?
Oh, okay. So, for the shortest movie or for the longest movie, it's okay.
The last one you just made mention of just now, I lost you a bit.
Okay. So now, I said if we want to see the movie name here, we're going to select, add the movie name as part of our query. And then, because we have selected movie name, we're going to need group by to call out the movie name as part of our results. But we're not going to stop there. We are also going to have to call order by to come and help us with our results. So we say order by, you see the longest movie, that's the alias that we have given to this aggregation. Longest movie, ascending order. If you run this, you still won't get your results because this will list all the movie names. We've said, okay, group by movie name. So even if this is going to give us all the movies, we're going to need to say, firstly, the order should change to descending, that is from highest to lowest, and then top will come in, top one, to limit the results to 1. So when you run this now, you will go from having just the maximum movie length to actually seeing the movie name and the length using it like this. I hope you got that. It's okay?
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, so basically, that is how min and max work. And also, as we were going on, I've also chipped in group by. I said group by is needed for selecting other columns with aggregated columns. Group by is the clause that allows you to call out other selected columns with your aggregated columns. Now, to the average function. For my Excel class, can somebody tell me what the average function does? For my Excel class, can somebody tell me what the average function does? Is Adekunle there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, Adekunle, from the Excel class, can you tell me what average does, the average function?
Okay, it's return the average value that we have within a particular range.
Okay. Does Abby? If you are here and you don't agree with that definition, please go ahead and tell us and give us another definition. If you do not agree with that definition, please go ahead and give us another definition. Abdullah, you're unusually quiet today.
What do you mean, sir? I'm not quiet.
Okay.
Yeah. So I agree with it actually, but average is more like mean, like when you try to calculate the mean or average value of something. So of a range of values.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So basically, the average gives us the arithmetic mean from a selected range of values. Now, bear in mind that the aggregate functions that we've treated so far, they all work with select. So if we want to find the average movie length for all of our movies, the average movie length for all the movies, we'll then go ahead to say select, and then we'll go from movies. Now, from here, we're going to select the average function and say, let it say, okay, we want to find the average of the movie length as average movie length. Now, if you look at this, can you see that it is not working? That's because average here in SQL is written as AVG. So this is how you write average here, unlike the way we write average in Excel. So if you run this, what you will get is that you will get the average of all the movie lengths. We'll get the average of all the movie lengths. Now, if we want to get the average movie length for each language, the average movie length for each language. Now, for this, we know that we are going to have to select from the movies table first things first, the movie language column. Second things, we're going to have to select, using the average function, the movie length column as well. One of the biggest things that SQL will test for you as a data analyst is your critical thinking and your problem solving skills. That is, you have to firstly understand the question before you can then translate it into a SQL query. So I'm just going to say as. Now, for this, are we going to need a group by here? If yes, why? If no, why?
We are going to need a group by.
Okay.
So
Why?
which will
Why are we needing a
movie,
group by?
so as to call out the values and the names of the languages.
All right. That's real good. I said it earlier that the moment you are selecting other columns with an aggregated column, just know you have to include a group by. So if you say group by the movie language, group by the movie language. Now, if we want to order the average movie length in a particular order, because if we run it like this is still going to work perfectly. This is still going to work. We have the movies and we have their length. However, if we want our results to be ordered, then we can include the order by and then say order by, let's do the average movie length in descending order. That is, let it go from the highest end value to the lowest. So if we execute here, can you see that the German movies average the longest, the Portuguese movies average second longest, and in this order. So basically, this is how order by and group by can work hand in hand to ensure that you get your answer correctly. So this is how the average function works. Mind you, if you want to find quickly, let me just test the average function again. So the average length of English movies, for example, average of English movies, we're just going to go select from movies should come, and then we'll go select the average of the movie length. So I'm just going to alias this and say as the average length. Now, can somebody tell me what else is still missing from this query to be able to answer the question above? Can you tell me what else is still missing in this query? What else is still missing in this query for us to get the result?
We need a group by.
Okay, look at the query very well.
I don't think.
Okay, who's speaking? Please go ahead and speak. I'm listening.
I feel like we can still get the result with this. I'm not.
Selecting from movie language, and you did not state that in your query.
Oh, okay. So, the question says average length of English movies.
Okay.
So I've written this so far. I'm asking, what else do we need with this query to be able to get the answer to this question?
Where clause.
Okay. So what are we using the where clause to do if you are saying it's the where clause?
Where movie language equals to English.
Okay. Who else agrees with that? If you disagree, please let us know what you will add.
I think I agree. I agree with him.
I agree with that. I agree.
I agree with that
Oh.
too.
Okay, definitely. So here, what we need to add is the where clause, like Abdullah rightly said, to say where our movie language equals English. And this will give us the results to what we are looking for in this case. Is that okay? So thank you very much for that, Abdullah. Now, another thing that I want to add under functions is the knowledge of mathematical operators. The knowledge of mathematical operators. Now, that is, you can create or perform calculations between two numeric columns within the same table. Now, take for example, if from the movie revenue table, I remember I showed us the movie revenue table earlier, and we could see that we have the domestic takings and the international takings. Now, if we want to add both of them together to get the total takings, if we want to add them together to get the total takings, you know the mathematical operators here, we have the, let me just list them out here. We have the backward slash for division. We have the asterisk for multiplication. And we have the normal guys that we're familiar with. That's the plus and the minus for subtraction. So if we want to get the total takings from the movie revenue table, what we are just going to do is say select. So here you can select the movie ID. You can select the movie ID and then say domestic, open a bracket. Whenever you want to perform an arithmetic operation on 2 columns or more, you have to open a bracket. Open a bracket, and then we say let me select the from so that to be able to reference the table. And then I'll say domestic takings plus, still inside that bracket, international takings. Now, you can decide to also give it an alias and say as total takings. Yeah. From the movie revenue. I want to ask, do you think we need a group by here? If yes, why? If no, why? Please look at the query very well before you give your answer. Do you think we need a group by here? If yes, why? If no, why? Let's take a look at the query. What do you think? Do you think we need a group by here? Okay, Mercy Amuchu.
No, no, no. I don't think we need a goodbye.
Okay, why don't you think we need a group by? I want to know the
Because
reason for your answer.
I think it's everything we are looking at, not I don't know.
Okay. I just wanted to be sure your answer is like absolute and you're not guessing your answer. So you said we don't need a group by. Any other person with a contrary opinion, do you think we need a group by?
I want to support our answer.
Okay. So why do you think we don't need a group by here?
So when you were explaining earlier, you said group bys are usually used to aggregate functions.
Yes.
So, and we are not using any aggregate function here. So what we are using,
Fantastic. So simply put, because we are not using any aggregate function here, group by doesn't need to come into the play. So if we run this, we will still get the total takings for each movie ID. Can you see that calculation has been done? So this is basically just like a formula, like you have just performed the calculation without necessarily using a function. I hope we're still together there. Okay, so I don't want to overpopulate this sheet with queries. I don't want to overpopulate this sheet with queries, but I'd like to continue to move on to the text.
can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Okay. So I noticed that the total takings were calculated based on the movie ID. So I
Yes.
want to ask, if we are not selecting with the movie ID, is there a possibility that we have the total calculation?
Well, Now, what you would do in that case is you say select sum. Can you see? Abdullah, I hope you are there. If you want
Yes.
to get a total, so you just say select a sum of this calculation, and if you run it, what we'll get will be just a sum. That's a total of everything. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so all right. So
Thank you, sir.
all right, you're welcome. So moving on from the aggregate functions, we are also going to be taking a look at text or string functions. Not to worry, at the end of the class, I will also be making the code available. One thing that I'll also do after today's class, last week because people were saying, sir, don't give us assignments, we have projects, we have this. This week, there's no project yet too. So that means after this class, you'll be expecting an assignment from me. Is that okay? Now, so text or string functions in SQL. Now, from our knowledge of Excel, can you walk me through some of the text functions that you learned before I start to list some that we'll be learning here? Some of the text functions that you learned. Some text functions that you learned from your Excel
Concatenate.
classes.
Yeah.
Concatenate, okay. Length, that's the length function.
Learn, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
We have right.
Left.
We have left.
We have text join. I don't know if that is possible.
Yeah.
So we have text join. Okay. Now, I'm going to be showing us some functions here. So we're going to start. We're going to do some of these text functions: upper, lower. We're going to do concat, obviously, concat, left and right. We're going to do substring. There's a substring function. Here
What
there's the
about proper?
replace. Sir?
I'm asking what about proper?
Here we have trim. We also have the proper function here. So we have proper. So basically, we already know what some of these text functions do. I'm just going to try to introduce us to how we use some of them that we probably are not familiar with from Excel with our knowledge here in SQL. So substring, trim, replace, concat, left, right, upper, lower, and proper. So let's start with upper and lower. You see, for text functions, I like to group them into categories. We have the combinational text functions that you use to combine two or more text values. We have concat, we have the ampersand sign, we have text join, we have that do that particular function. And we have the case text functions, that is text functions that alter the case of certain selected cells or selected columns. Under these case text functions for the upper, the lower, and the proper. And if we're able to speak to this, it means we already know what they do. So similarly to the average or the aggregate functions, the text functions also work with select. In fact, almost every function works with select. So take, for example, if we want to select all the first names and all the last names of the directors, you say select upper, the column that we want to apply it on. This will be the first name column. And then the lower function that converts all selected text to lowercase. So this is how it works here. And then we can say from let's do the actors table, because this contains names of the actors as well from the actors table. Now, if you run this, look at how the names will be returned. Can you see? However, anytime you use any function, the result it will give you, you will have to alias it if you want the column headers to be named as well. So this is what the upper function does, and this is what the lower function does in SQL. Moving on to the other functions, that is the proper function. If I change this first name now to Abdullah, can you see something?
Yes, sir.
Aha. So what do you get from this? Here we don't have the proper function.
Yeah.
Aha. Now, don't worry, as we go on, I will explain the substring and the replace function. I think those are the new functions here that we probably didn't use in Excel. So here we have the positional text functions. Those ones will be left, right, and substring. Left, right, and substring. Now, from the movies table, if I select all from the movies table now, if I select all from the movies table, if I select all from the movies table and I go, okay, let me view the movies table. Good. Now, if we want to extract just 7 characters from the left in the movie name table, all we have to do is go select left, select left, so I'll say from movies. For this, you have to specify, can you see the syntax? You have to specify the column that you want to call the value count from, and then the number of characters that you want it to return. So after selecting the column, you then specify, say, okay, I want 6 characters. Anything that you put after specifying the column name must be an integer, because obviously it's a count of characters. Just the same way in our Excel as well. You have to firstly select the cell or the range that contains your values before deciding what you want to extract, or the count of characters you want to extract from the left or from the right. I hope you got that. I don't know if you have any questions. Okay. So if I want 7 characters here, I'll just go ahead and say 7. Now, if you run this from the movie name, this will give us just 7 characters from each. I don't know if you see this. Now, you see that here, we also have the space. This is also something we know from Excel, that the space is also a part of our character count. Now, the same thing right does, just from an opposite direction. The right returns a number of characters from the right. So from this same movie name, same syntax, just different results. And you see from the movies table, what this will do is that it will give you 7 characters from the right, that is from the end of each word. Basically, this is how the right function works. Now, in Excel, I know we have mid. We have functions like mid. Now, for mid in Excel, here we have the substring function. What the substring function does is that it allows you to select the desired number of text, that number of characters that you want from a text from any starting point. You know, when you want to use the mid function in Excel, it firstly ask you, okay, where's your start point? That is, where do you want me to start from? Where's the midpoint? Now, if we put in, and we say from, let's do from the movies table now. If we want to extract from the movie name, if you want it to give us, don't forget, let me even try this with just a random name. Let me put my name here in quotes. Let me say favor in quotes. If I want it to start from A and give me 3 characters, this is what this is going to look like. So if I run this, look at what the source string will return. Can you see? Starting from, so this is how the source string function was, that starting from the second character, return 3 characters. So that's why we're seeing A, V, and O, because I've indicated a start point. The same way, you can use this on columns to say, okay, let's say we want to find the movie name from the movies table. The substring function would also give you a result based on the column that you have selected, basically acting like your mid function. I don't know if you have any questions before I move on to the next text function. I don't know if you have any questions before I move on to the next text function. All right, now the next text function is the reverse function. What the reverse function does is that it flips values in a column, that is from right to left instead of from left to right. I'm going to select everything from the movies table. I'm going to select everything from the movies table, and I'm going to show us something from there. Don't forget, these are text functions. These are text functions. So if I select all from the movies table and I highlight this, if I execute, good. Look at the movie name column. If I want to flip the movie name column, all I have to do is go select, and then I'll select the movie name right by the side, and then I'll flip the movie name using the reverse function, asking it to flip the values from the movies table. Now, if you highlight this and run it, you get the values in the movie name, and then you get the values flipped around using the reverse function. That's what the reverse function does. Now, we also do have the replace function. Now, the replace function works like find and replace in Excel. The replace function works like find and replace. What the replace function does is that it finds a particular value and replaces it within your data. I'm going to show you a very ideal example of this. Now, look at the actors table. If you want to replace the F in this gender column with female, if you want to replace it with female, we'll just go select. And then we'll select, let's call out the first name and the last name as well. Then the replace function. The way the replace function works is that it will ask for the column that you want it to search, that is expression to be searched, say gender, the value that you want it to find. That's what will come, and that's to be in quotes. Say M. And then what you want, for in this case, let's say F. Let's do female. And then what do you want it to replace it with? Let's do female. Close this bracket, and then we say from the actors table. Now, if we run this query, every instance where the replace function finds F in this data, it will replace it with your newly entered value. So this is how the replace function works. Just like find and replace. You can, it's very useful for data cleaning. Okay, there's a column that contains values that we don't want, and we want to replace it. We cannot change the data type, but we want to remove something or change something for the sake of certain calculations. Another very important function here is the concat function. The concat function. The concat function falls under the combinational functions. That is, functions that we can use to combine two or more columns or values. Now, if we want to combine the first name and last name of these actors, all you have to do is go select the concat function, and then you select what you want to combine. That is the first name, and then the other column that you want to combine, the last name. You can just alias it and say as the full name. Now, this will be from the actors table. So if you run this, look at what the results will look like. Now, can you see that all the names have been added together without a space? So if I may ask, when you want to add your space after using concat in your Excel, how do you go about it? If you want to add a space to values that you combine using concat, how do you go about it from Excel?
We put the space in between double column.
Okay. Do you mean, okay. So you mean after I select the first name and the last name, I have to put a space in quotes before then going to the last name. So does this fix it? Okay. Let's run it and find out. Okay, good. Thank you, Adekunle, for that response. Good. So now you see that that has worked. Fine. That has worked. Now, we also have, the concat. We call this the concat with space function. Now, what does the concat? The concat with space function is similar to text join. It's similar to the text join that we use in Excel. What it does is that when you select and you go concat, this is concat with space here. Now, the first thing to ask you for is the separator. That is, these words that you want to combine, what do you want to use to separate them? So we'll put the space, and then it will ask, what are the columns you want to combine together? So if you want to combine the first name, the last name, and let's say the nationality from the directors table, what this does is that it will add, so very similar to concat, but this takes the delimiter first, and it doesn't always have to be a space. Your delimiter doesn't always have to be a space. It could be an underscore, it could be a tab, it could be an hyphen, it could be anything that I want to use to separate words. Moving on from this to the trim function. We know the trim function to be a function that we use for removing redundant or extra spaces. But here in SQL, there are three types of trims. We have the L trim also standing for left trim. We have the R trim, and we have the trim itself. The L trim, the R trim, and the trim. Basically, the L trim stands for left trim, the R trim stands for right trim, and the trim for the actual normal trim. Basically, while the trim function removes all redundant spaces either before or after a text, the L trim returns redundant spaces before a text, that's at the start. The R trim removes redundant spaces after, and the trim removes both. So most times we don't bother about these two when we have this that can remove both before and after. But I had to explain that for the sake of knowledge. So let me put this into practice before moving on to the other function types. So for this, we're going to select the trim function and the word that we want to trim. So I'm going to put a space before July, put a space after again, and then end it. So if I run this now, you see that if I execute it, now, the best way to find out from here would just be to find out that, okay, the space, the extra space has been removed. Is I can copy the text, take it to my Excel, or take it to any word editor, paste it there to verify. And the Abdullah is just doing fine here. Just copied it to my Word. Let me share with us. So basically, that's a way to find out that your trim has worked fine. I don't know if you have any questions on what we've learned so far, or I can proceed. Any questions on what we've learned so far, or I can proceed? Okay. If you want to ask a question, please go ahead. Okay, so moving on from the text functions, we are going to be going into the date functions. We're going to be going into the date functions. Now, can somebody tell me some of the date functions that you learned in Microsoft Excel, please? Some of the date functions that you learned in Microsoft Excel. Some of the date functions that we learned in Microsoft Excel.
Day,
Okay,
month,
day, month.
year.
Yeah. Okay. So here, we know that date functions are functions that we use for date manipulation and date extraction. So here, I'm going to be showing us some functions such as the getDate function, the getDate function, the date add, that is the date add function, the date diff function, the date diff function. We're going to be trying to get that. And also, we know the normal date functions, that is the year, the month, and the day functions. Also, we have the format function. Now, to start with, let's take a look together at some of these functions. So basically, if we start with the getDate function, what does the getDate function do? The getDate function is like the now function in Excel. The getDate function returns the date and time. So if you go select getDate, all you have to do is open and close the bracket, and let me say as today's underscore date. So let me add what the get date function does. Now, if you run this, what you will get is the current date and the current time. So basically like a date time. That's what it does. For the date add function, you know you can perform calculation between certain dates. The date add function is used to add or subtract an interval from a date. We use the date add function to add or subtract an interval from a date. Take for example, if you want to extract 2 months, 2 days, 2 weeks from a particular date, we use the date add function to add or subtract an interval from a date. Now, take for example, let's say we want to, let me look for a column that contains dates. Okay, the actor's date of birth. Now, let's say we want to select the date of birth of the actors, and then we want to use date add. We want to use, when you open the date add function, what it will ask for is number one, it will ask for the interval, that is what you're trying to subtract for. Is it the month? Is it the years? If I pick months, please take notice of these results that are showing here. If I say month, it will then ask me, what do you want to do having selected the month? Do you want to take out or you want to add? If I want to take out, I'll say minus. If I want to add, all I need to do is put the number of months that I want to increase by. So I'll say, let me minus, so you see, minus 2 months. From where? From the date of birth. So the syntax is, number one, the interval, that's the date part. Number two, what you want to, the interval, do you want to add to it or do you want to subtract from the selected interval? And then the name of the column, which is date of birth. So let me save it as new date. Let me alias it and call it new date. Now, if I run this, you see that this has removed 2 months from each of the months, because here, what we did was minus 2. If what we did here was 2, no minus. If what we did here was 2, no minus. Can you see that each of the months have been increased by 2 months each? I don't know if you got that or if you have any questions so far.
Clear.
Okay, so we are good. You got that? All right. Now, that's what the date add function does. We use it to add or subtract an interval from a date. Now, let's start with also, let's do another function. The other function here is the date diff function. Now, the date diff function is the date difference function. What the date diff function does is that we use it to calculate the difference between 2 days. We use it to calculate the difference between two dates in a specified time frame, or should I say in a specified unit. So take for example, if Abdullah has been owing me money since 2015, and I just want to know how many years he has been owing me for. Let's say he borrowed the money on October 1st, 2015. If I want to use the date diff function to get just the year, I'm going to have to specify that, okay, date difference, I want the year. Now, So how do we use the date diff function in an actual calculation? So to use the date diff in an actual calculation, so I'm going to select the date of birth from the actors table. I think we used that earlier. Okay, now say from the actors table. Okay, now we want to find how old each of the actors would be if they were still today. We want to find how old they'll be from when they were born compared to the year we are currently in. So I'm going to say date diff and then specify that the time frame that we want to see should be the year. What we want to perform the difference based on should be the year. And then the column that contains the date, that is the date of birth. Okay, extract the year from the date of birth. Now, what should it use as the differential column? That is, the date of birth should be minus from what? Let me use the get date to insert today's date. Then I'll ask it, I'll close the bracket for the date diff function that was opened earlier, and I'll save this as year. Now, if you run this, look at what the answer would look like. Can you see that compared to the year 2025, this is how old all of these actors are or should be. This is somebody born in 1913 now, 112. So what it has done is that it has subtracted the year of birth from today's year and changed that result. If what we wanted to see was a month differential, if we wanted to see was a month differential, instead of using year, we'll just change it to month. And it will also give us the number of months that are between the two selected dates. I don't know if we got that or if we'd like to ask any question. Please ask your question. Please ask your question if you didn't get that. Okay, so that's what the date diff function does. Other date functions that we most likely already know, I'm going to use them together at once. That is the day, the month, and the year functions. So we select, for this, we select the date of birth from the actors column, from the actors table. Don't forget, for text, we're selecting text because obviously you need text to use text. For aggregate functions, we're selecting columns that contain numbers or that we could count. Also for date, definitely you need date for using date functions. So from the actors table, we'll select the date of birth, and then for this, just tab, and then we'll select the year. Let's extract the date of birth, the year from the date of birth. We know what the year function does. It extracts, so as year, we have to also signify that here we're going to a new column from here. The month as well, from the date of birth column. This will extract as month. Mind you, if you wrote all of this on the same line, it will still work. If you wrote all of this on the same line, it will still work. I'm just trying to make it cleaner and easier to read and understand for those that will be going through the code as well when they are trying to practice from that same date of birth column, because that's where our date values can be found. And then they can go as day. So if you run this will give you the years, the month, and the day side by side with the date of birth, similarly to how these three functions work in Microsoft Excel. Similar to how these three functions work in Microsoft Excel. So if you already had a sound understanding of this from Excel, I hope that this was not difficult to comprehend. And then finally, of all the date functions, the format function. The format function. What the format function does is that we use it for date formatting. We use it for date formatting. Now, for when we did date formatting in Excel, we understood that there's a way we can format dates to get specific answers using date code, such as that MMM will give us the month abbreviated. MMM will give us the month abbreviated. 4Ms will give us the month in full. How many of us remember this from our Excel? Do you bear witness to this, that you understand how this works?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
Yes.
you understand date formatting. Thank you. Credits to Miss Emanuela. She did good. Now, moving on from that, basically, you can use the format function here in Excel to get values to dance to your tune. So take, for example, if you want to select a particular date and change the format of that date, you can select a date from the actors table, So we select the date of birth and then we format. Format will firstly ask you for the name of the column that contains the date, and then the format that you like to change it to. So if I like to change it to the day of the week abbreviated and then the month in full, so I'll just say give us a new date like this. Close the bracket of this and you run this. So let's do one formatted. Let's do, how many M's do I have here? Let me capitalize the M's. So I'll get the right value. I want to get the right answer here. Okay. So there you have the date formatting in. I don't know if you have any questions from this, or I can rightly move on as well. I don't know if you have any questions from this. Okay. Now, moving on to other function types. Because from the start, I told us we're going to be looking at quite a few function types. We've reviewed the aggregate functions, the text functions, the date functions. Now, let's look at the case functions. Before we move on from the case functions, I'd like to mention, so that I don't move away from it too bad, I'd like to mention that aside the group by clause that we use for calling out other columns that we select with aggregated columns, we also have a clause that we use for ordering aggregated columns, and that is the having clause. similar to the group by clause, but working very differently. While the group by clause selects other columns that go alongside your aggregated columns, having filters, or should I say orders, your aggregated columns. It orders the aggregated columns. Now, take for example, situations where we can use the having clause. So I'm just going to put in here the having clause. I said what it does is that it filters or orders aggregated columns results. Now, quick one. Let's select movie languages from the movies table. So say from the movies table, we want to do a count of movie languages. So I'll say count movie language. I'll alias it and say count. Now, here, definitely we know that the group by will come in because we have selected another column. We know the movie language will come in. After this, the having clause can then come in again. So let's say we want to see, if you run this now, we'll get movie languages and their count from the movies table. However, let's say we want to see movies that have more than a count of 2. This is where having comes in, because we now want to filter the aggregated column. So if we say having the count of the movie language, or you can use the alias name, but preferably it's safer to just use where the count of the movie language is greater than 2. Now look at the result that we had before. From the moment where you include the having here and you run this, can you see the result now? Can you see the result now? So this is what the having clause does. It filters the already aggregated columns based on any condition of your choice. Is somebody trying to ask a question? So I'm going to use the having clause one more time, just so we get familiar with it. This time, we're going to select the movie language from the movies table. And then we'll do a sum of the movie length. So, okay, I want to sum the movie length as total length, as the total length. Now, if we want to use this, we have to group by. We've added another column. So we group it by the movie language. If we run this, we'll get our answers, their total length. However, let's add a clause using having that you must have a sum of your movie, the sum of the movie length must be, the sum of the movie length must be longer than 200 minutes, as greater than 200. What this will do to our result is that to filter out movies that don't meet that criteria. Can you see that there's no result here where the total length is less than 200? So this is where, or what the having clause can do. you use it to filter your aggregated columns. So still together, any questions before I move on to the case functions?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, please go on.
Okay, so how to ask this having function? Can we
Yes,
use? Okay, yeah, I wanted to go back. Sorry.
I'm here already.
That okay? Can we use order by? Then will not be total this alias. That's order by
Can we use order by
total.
after
Yeah.
using having? Yeah.
No. Instead of having, after using this goodbye, I just want to know if we'll get the same result, right? After this goodbye, like we'll remove this having, then it will now be order by
Okay, I'm with you.
so we remove this having, yes, now be order by total underscore length, then greater than 200.
Okay, order by total length. Greater, are you still there?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay, can you see? Can you see that this is already giving us another line of red?
Okay.
Because the order by
Incorrect.
function just exactly, so it's an incorrect syntax. The order by is just concerned with sorting your results in a particular order using a particular column. Okay, order it by this, either in ascending or in descending order. So that's the function of order by. Having is the one that filters based on your aggregated columns. I don't know if that's fine.
Yes, thank you.
Sir,
Okay, so I'm with you, Abdullah.
okay, so can we now say that order by doesn't work with
Okay,
aggregate function, or it does work with aggregate function?
now if order by is going to work with aggregated functions, the only thing it should do is to change the arrangement. See, it's going to work with the total length now. Order by total length. If I say in descending order, this is still going to work just fine. What it is just going to do is the arrangement. It's going to arrange it from the highest to the lowest. But group by and having have done their work before order by then came in to just arrange. So Abdullah, I hope you got that.
Yes. So that means for
Okay.
order by to work, there must be the having and the group by there.
That is for the question that we try to answer here.
Yes.
Yes. What you just need to know is how they work individually. Group by comes in if you have selected another column with an aggregated column. Having comes in if you want to filter your aggregated column. And order by comes in if you need to arrange your results either in descending or in ascending order. So, Abdullah, I hope that is clearer than before now.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
All right. So, moving on from having to the case function. Moving on from having to the case function. Now, you see, the case function, may I like to call it, is a conditional function, basically, that allows you to perform calculations based on different conditions. So for the sake of those of us that might be reviewing this later, please allow me quickly add that definition here. So I said that case functions, or let me say the case statement, let me use that word, just like if is a conditional function that allows you to perform different calculations based on different conditions. Okay, now this is how we use the case function. So I'm going to come here now, for example, and then say, let's view everything from a table that we can use for our conditions. So let's select all from here. Okay, good. So here we have the movie length. Now, let's categorize our movies based on their length. Let's categorize our movies based on their length. Now, if this was Excel now, and we wanted to use if, we'll say if so cell equals to, we use a relational operator, or we'll say is greater than this. Let the value if true be this. Now, the case function has some brothers that it works with. And for this case, what we are going to be using to group the movies is that any movie that is less than or equal to 80 minutes long, we are going to call it, we're going to group them under short movies. And then any movie that is from 80 minutes to 120 minutes, that's from 80 to 120. Within 80 to 120, let's say 81 to 120, we'll call them normal movies. We'll call them normal movies. However, any movie that is now above 120, that is above 120 minutes, let's call them the long movies. Now, if we want to input this into a query, if we want to use SQL to bring this to life, first thing we'll do is we'll go select. Okay, so let's select the movie name so that we'll be able to see. Let's select the movie name and let's select the movie length. Now, before we go to the from, our case, which is our if, we have to come after our selections. It will have to come after our selections. So I'm going to press tab and I'm going to say case. Now, when you write case, you then start to state your conditions. You start to state your conditions. Press tab here and I'll say when. You know, I said case does not stand alone. When is one of the commands that work with case. Okay, when the movie length, all this is underlining in red because we've not specified where we are selecting from. So if I say from movies, it will now know the columns we are dealing with. So I'll say when the movie length is less than or equal to 80. Then also comes in. Now, if this was Excel, we would say, okay, if equal to if, we'll first select our condition, and then after the condition, we'll insert our value if true. So this is simply what we're doing that. Imagine this was if, it would be if the movie length is less than or equal to 80. It will be a command that will come in here, but we're using then. Then our result, which will be in quotes, because it is a text. Then short movie. This is condition 1, that any movie that is 80 minutes and less. The other conditions will also follow this syntax. That is when that same movie length is less than or equal to 120. That is starting from 81 to 120. Then let them fall under the normal movies. That is normal movie. Now, even in if, you know your last condition is usually your value if false. That is, take for example, if we are trying to group movies into short movies, normal movies, and long movies, we've already done short movies, we've already done normal movies. Then our last value will be, if you're not a short movie, if you're not a normal movie, then it means you are a long movie. Then this is where else will come in. That is else. That is our value if false. If you find any other movie that does not fall under the normal movie or the short movie, let it be grouped under this last category, which will be the long movie. Now, to wrap this up, we now have to put in the name of the column. Say end as, meaning whenever you perform all of this, name the column, let's say length category. You've already specified from movies. So if you run this now, this will give you a result where you see the movie name, the movie length, and the length category based on the conditions that you have just entered. I know that might seem a little complex, so if anybody has questions, please you can ask.
Hello, sorry, please. Can I ask a question?
All right, please go ahead. I'm listening.
Okay, please. Does it now means like adding a conditional column, like what we do in
Yes,
Excel?
yes,
Okay.
that's exactly what it does.
Or others? Okay, okay,
Mm,
okay.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you very
All
much,
right.
sir.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I don't know if there are any questions aside Itunu's question on the case function. Better off, I think I should try it. I should use it in another scenario so we'll be able to understand it better. Is that okay by us? Okay. So now let's use the case function again. Abdullah, I hope we are still together. So for this,
Yes,
let's
sir, we are.
group the total takings. We want to group the total takings. That's from the movie revenue table. So I'm coming. Let me view the movie revenue table here. Okay. So we have here the domestic takings and the international takings. Here, we want to do a calculation and then use it as our condition. Okay. We want to group our takings into 3 categories. If the total, that is, if the total takings, if it is less than or equal to 50, if it is less than or equal to 50, then let this be a low income movie. Let this be a low income movie. Say low income. If the total takings is less than or equal to 150, let it be a mid-income movie. If it is greater than 150, if it is greater than 150, let the result that we will get, let it be high income. Now, if we want to put this in a formula, first things first, let's select. Let's put our from as well, so that we'll have a specific indexing for the columns. Okay, so let's call out the movie ID. Now, for the total takings, we have to do a calculation of the domestic takings plus the international takings. Now, when we do this, we'll then alias it and call it total takings. Good. Then we can bring in our case to say, let our case here be, let our case be that, hold on, let me put this on another line to keep them. So our case will be that when you see, if I want to use the total takings, I have to call out the entire calculation. So I'll say when the domestic takings and the international takings, that's when the addition is less than or equal to 50. Now, don't forget, these columns contain decimal. So I cannot use an integer here. I have to say point to show that I'm referencing a decimal. So the data type that our calculation is coming from is also important. Then this will be low. Now, one thing about case that I like so much is if a formula works for the first one, you can copy it, move to the second one, paste it, and then change the condition and the output to say 150, and then you go mid. For the final one here, is going to be else, because we've already arrived at the value false. That is, if none of these are met, then let it fall under this category to say high income, and then end as, this would be the name of the column. This would be the name of the column here underneath. So I'm going to have to tab this. This is just to ensure that this is readable for you. So I'm going to say end as the name. Let's call this takings category. We'll call this takings category, and then from the table that we're referencing, which is the movie revenue table. So if you run this now, what this would have done is that it would have created a table or returned a query where you get your movie ID, the calculation of the total takings, and then the categorization of these takings into different categories. So I hope we understand that. I don't know if there's any question. I don't know if there's any question.
Hello.
So I have a question, sir.
Okay, let's take the questions one by one.
Okay, ladies first.
Okay, so please go on.
Okay, sorry, please. I want to ask about the plus you use. Can we
Yes.
also use sum in
Now,
the to replace that plus? Maybe sum, use the function sum. And if we are to use sum, how are we going to write it in this case? If we want to add the
okay,
domestic and international takings, how are we going to use sum? Sorry. That's my question.
okay,
Thank you.
okay. That's Itunu's question. Let me take Adekunle's question so that I'll answer both together.
Okay, so my question is, on that line where we have when, the two when,
Yes.
like instead of
Yeah.
that domestic taking plus international taking,
Yeah.
since we have references as total taking, can we
Yes.
just write total taking in those places so that shorten our
The length of our query. All right. Thank you. So let me start by answering Adekunle. I'm going to try to take out this domestic plus total takings, and I'm going to put total plus international takings and put total takings. So I want you to see what will happen. Can you see? Now, the only time where you can use the alias of your aggregated column is when you want to order by. I don't know if you got that. The only time where you can use the alias of your calculated or aggregated column is when you want to order. For every other thing else, you have to call out either the aggregation or the calculation.
All right.
Now, if I want to order by the total takings now, Adekunle, if I want to order by the total takings, you see that if I put order by and I call out, can you see that it can pick it up from here?
Yeah, I can see
All right.
that.
All right. So that's the answer to your question. Are you good?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Now, to Itunu's question. In this case, we cannot use sum. Sum will do the total of everything. We need plus so that we'll be able to get an iterative calculation. That is, it will be able to go row by row. If we use sum in this case, it's going to just add everything up. So, Itunu, do you get why we had to use a plus here and not a sum?
Yes, 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 yes. Understand.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
In every calculation, we should always know when to use our plus and thank you, sir.
Yes, yes. Your network seemed to be breaking earlier, but I think it's better now. Okay. So I got you, and I don't know if the house has any other question before we proceed. I don't know if the house has any other question before we proceed. Okay. Now, to put our knowledge of aggregate functions to the test, this assignment that I want to give, I don't want it to be just anybody. I want it to be people that have joined the call and have also been active in the class. So the database that you're going to be using for the assignment, I will also create it here. I want to use this opportunity to also show us how to import an already existing spreadsheet into a database. So to do this, I'm going to come to database, right click on it and say new database. Call this database name Bureaus, or let me say international Bureaus. So I'm going to name this like this and press OK. Okay, so inside this.
Sorry, please, I'm not sure what you are doing. No, I don't know. Maybe.
Okay, can any other person confirm if they can see me?
Yeah,
Can
we
you see
can
my
see.
screen?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Please, whoever that is, I'd like you to just, if you can, maybe leave where you are at, and if not, you can just leave and try to join in. It's a network issue. All right. So now that I've created the database, I said we're going to be using for the assignment. Now, if I've taught us how to create tables manually, how to input data into the tables manually. And somebody asks that, what if we already have the data in a spreadsheet? How do we then bring in that spreadsheet? Now, number one, any file that you're going to bring into your database as a table that is an already existing spreadsheet, you have to have converted it into a CSV file so that you'll be able to bring it in as a flat file. Don't forget, the CSV file is almost seen as a text file. So in that database, let me share my entire screen so that we'll see what this process of bringing in the database that we're going to be using. Okay. Okay. I want to share my entire screen so we can see. All right. Now, please let me know if you can see my screen. Confirmation that you can see my screen, please.
Yes, you can see.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Okay. Now, inside this international bureaus, if I want to bring in a table, we'll come to the database, right click on it and say tasks, say import flat file. So this will open the import pane and ask you to go on to bring in a file. So you have to select the location of the file you want to bring in, and then I'll go and select that file. So this is the file. Now it's going to ask me, what should this table be called? After I've selected the file, it's going to try to name the table based on the name of the file. But if I don't want that name, I can delete and say, just call it Buries. Now, that's going to be the name of the table within the database. If I press next, SQL will then give us a preview of the data. Okay, this is what I'm seeing. Oh, this is what this looks like. Then we press next. Ensure that you use rich data type detection to know the data type for each of these. So you say next. Now what SQL will do is that it will automatically detect the data type that is most suitable for this data. I don't know if you can see this. It automatically detects the data type. Now, if there is any column that you would like to change the data type, take for example this year's column. If you want to change the year's column to maybe a text, you can just click on it and come and change. It will give you a list of the data types, and you can select to bring in to change the data type. Now, if you press next, having changed any data type of your choice, it will show you the summary of all the actions that you've performed. And if you press finish, it will load that data. You get this success, operation complete. And if you close this, now I'm going to save the query that we ran so far, and I'm going to refresh. So if I refresh inside this international bureaus database and I open the table, it will load. Can you see the bureaus table? If I want to then view this table, I would right click on the database, on the international bureaus database. I would right click on it and open a new query. Then I'll say select. So this will be us viewing the new table. So say select or from. The moment you press from, don't forget that we've referenced. Can you see that the international bureaus is highlighted? So you say from the name of the table, bureaus. So the moment you run this, can you see the values that have been populated are now showing? So this is the other way to bring in an already populated table. So for the sake of the assignment I'm going to be giving, this is the data that is going to be used. And definitely, when we finish it, I will also take review ahead of tomorrow's class and also to correct. I don't know if there are any other questions again before we call it a night. I don't know if there are any other questions again before we call it a night. Okay. So who is asking a question? Please go ahead.
Okay, so I was going to ask for this assignment. We are going to review it tomorrow. That means we are doing it tonight, right?
The assignment.
Yes,
What was the
I'd like to
assignment
review it tomorrow.
So what's the assignment?
I'll
Are
be
you going to
Yes, I'm going to be sending it alongside the code that I'll be uploading to the classroom tonight. All right.
Okay.
No, it's nothing to worry about. It's something that we can do. All right. So once again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining in and joining in on time. I look forward to seeing us once again tomorrow for the continuation of the class. For if you're part of the people that have been having issues installing, after we end this call, please ensure that you send me a text so I can send you a Google Meet link for us to review the issue that you are having. In that case, I'd like to thank every one of you once again. Thank you, Isoken. You are always one of the first ones to join. Thank you, Abdullah, for your active participation and constant communication. Adekunle, Yetunde, and every other person on the call. Oluwadamilola, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful night rest.
You too.